Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 12th Annual Naples International Film Festival and this special TalkBack Q&A. I'm Shannon Franklin, festival producer. We want to thank our TalkBack Q&A sponsors, Saran and Stan Kraushar. So today, we are delighted to be talking about the narrative feature, Love Type D, and it is my absolute privilege to introduce to you the writer, producer, and director of the film, Sasha Collington. Hi, Sasha.
Oh, hello. Thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be here virtually.
We're delighted to have you here. Now, where are you zooming in from right now?
I'm zooming in from the UK. So yeah, from London.
So we're a very international film festival, so this helps us. Thank you, yes. Well, it's so good to see you. We are just so thrilled to have your fantastic film part of our festival program. And, you know, of course, we wish we could physically have you here, but I know our audience is going to be so excited to hear all the, behind the scenes about the film. I love to start things off. Can you tell us a little bit about, you're the writer of the project as well. What inspired you to put this story on paper? It's such a unique take on a rom-com. I love it. So maybe you can give us a little backstory on that.
Well, it's so funny because many times after people see the film, people would be chatting to me in a party or something. And then at some point they'll ask me, is there any truth in this, Jean? And it's at some point in the conversation. Sometimes it's late in the conversation, sometimes it's earlier, and sometimes I say, yes, there is actually. It's based on real research, and then I tell them no. They look so sad about it, and I say no, I made it up. So I think it started as a short film, which is about basically the first scene in the restaurant was the beginning of the short film, and it kind of went in a different direction because it was really about, Frankie and Wilbur. They're the only two characters in that short film. And then I wanted to kind of roll it out, but I didn't want it to be about her pursuing this man that doesn't obviously want her, and so I wanted to do something a bit more philosophical about heartbreak, because it's such an intangible thing, the idea that someone can love you, today but not tomorrow. And I think that's something everyone, and especially now with so much uncertainty, I feel, so many odd uncertainties are like part of life. And I'm very interested in science, despite having no gift in science, no background in science. So I did research because, I think the nature nurture thing is very interesting. To what degree are you a product of your environment, or you predestined? So I think I put that into play with romance, because I think it can feel that way with romance. People can often feel, and people who are incredibly attractive and interesting and charming, can still have like sort of, romantic disasters. And I think it's got nothing to do with the individual. It's just that these things happen, but people can internalize them. Oh, this must be me. The world must be stacked against me. And so I think it's from there. So it's a long explanation.
A great one.
It's from there that I got the idea for the story.
I mean, you're right. At the top, you said, people ask, and even knowing I haven't read any research on that, and, I'm happily married and have been for a long time. If you had tapped into that, I'm pretty sure you would be doing a whole other circuit, of talk shows and whatnot about this science, making lots of money on that gene you found. But it is so relatable in that, yeah, I think I love right out of the gate, like the premise of it is so fantastic, but just it is relatable no matter what your background. We all have been in those circumstances. And I think, as you were saying, the idea that it's not you, it's some other thing you can't control. So playing with that. So when you sat down to write, and I love that it was a springboard from a short film, and did you do a lot of scientific research to put a thread of some type of real science behind what we've now all said, everybody, is not actual science? There is no love type D gene. Did you do some research there science-wise? Because it felt at times quite like there was some really solid research in there.
I actually did a lot of research, and so I got very interested in epigenetics and the way that I'm not even going to try and explain epigenetics. Just Google it and read someone who's more able to, has better qualifications than me. But yeah, I did a lot of research, and I talked to biologists, and and we played around with the script and the film of how much science to put in there, because we wanted enough for it to be believable. But what we found is that if we put too much in, people got bored, because it felt like, what is this, an educational video? This should be a narrative, this should be fun, and it's comedy. So yeah, it was a very fine line, because I wanted it to have enough science that actually it was plausible, and but not so much that people got bogged down in it, because actually sometimes if you over explain, it's actually less believable.
Yeah.
So it was, the balance was quite particular, but along the way I just found it very interesting, because there's a lot of research about this, and despite the fact that there is no gene, people don't really know if it's to do with your your family circumstance as a child, or whether it's to do with your genes. And you can see with siblings how different people can be from exactly the same circumstance, and the same genetic, so I think it's an area that interests me.
Yeah, no, and that comes through, and it makes that journey of this story, again, so relatable in that circumstance. And I think immediately have to jump to casting, because telling this story, and it's got such comedy, it's got such heart, it's got this unique twist that you've given it. How did you find this phenomenal cast? Obviously starting with Frankie, what a key role, and then we will get to Wilbur, because that I think is another very important character in the story. So please tell us a little bit about the background of how you found these amazing actors.
Well, thanks for your kind words about it. So with Frankie, she was very hard to cast, actually, and we saw a lot of actresses in London, and I couldn't find the right person, because I wanted to find someone who had that leading role charisma, but it was also funny, but it was also very believable, that you could really believe this was happening to her. But you could also believe that she perhaps might lack in confidence. She could play that she, and so it took ages, and then we were about, I think, a month off shooting principal photography, and I hadn't cast the lead role. And so the previous year in Berlin, I had watched this independent film with the guy from True Blood who's Australian, and it's called Griff the Invisible. And so the romantic lead who played opposite him, I remember she was very funny and very deadpan. And I, in the middle of the night, I emailed her agent, and she was in Australia. Sorry, that's a really crucial thing. And we're in the UK, and that's a long flight. And so I emailed her agent in the middle of the night to say, I don't know if she'd be interested. And then I heard back from her, and she was. So she came over from Australia to do the film, and we hadn't, done any rehearsal or anything. So she just arrived. And I remember on the first day of, we did some rehearsal, prior to the shoot in London. And then we did the first day of filming, and I saw her on the camera, and I thought, yes, she is just the right one for this. And I don't know if you want me to talk about Wilbur.
Please, I mean, yeah, and she's phenomenal. She's the anchor for this. She's our girl, obviously, I mean, Wilbur, like you said, you open with that scene, and it sets the tone, and he's just, I mean, the entire cast is fantastic, but I think moving to Wilbur next makes the most sense, because I think he's one of the most memorable parts of the film. Yeah, please let us know.
Oh, well, he was also very hard to cast, because he has so much dialogue. I mean, he's just a chatterbox in every scene, and it's quite, it's quite esoteric the way that he talks. So it's not really like any 12-year-old child really talks. So some British ones do talk like that. They're like small adult men.
That is how I would describe his character. Yep, absolutely.
That's not how I was when I was that age, but no. They do exist. So we'd again seen many people, couldn't find the right one. And then I got this little self-tape in, and I thought, I should put this self-tape on YouTube, because it was so adorable. So he began, and this was before COVID, so people could have auditioned in person. I'm not sure why he sent a tape, but he began by saying, he introduced himself in this very cute way. He was only like 11, and he said to me that he wore glasses, but he could take them on and he could take them off, and he demonstrated, and it was just such a nice beginning to his audition, that it got that I felt that he was unintentionally funny. And also kind of like very innocent in a way, but also quite also like quietly authoritative in the way that he spoke, and I found that really sweet. And I think sometimes children can be so have such clarity in what they say, even whilst you feel like, aren't you supposed to get wiser as you get older? Aren't I supposed to be getting wiser?
Completely. Yeah, he's their relationship, their friendship is, I think, probably one of the most special parts of the story, and I think an unexpected thing, and again, another unique aspect to, your straightforward rom-com, which this is not. As the writer of the project as well, wearing both hats, on set, I always ask for people who've written and directed their own work, are you particularly precious about your writing? Do you like them to stay close to the script? Was there some improvising? How do you like to work on set with your actors?
I'm pretty flexible actually, and I'm always feel that there's room for improvement. So generally in many instances, we would do an improvised take at the end or at the beginning, just to see, could we get anything funny? And like some improvised lines did make it into the final film. But it's interesting, yeah, one of the actors, I think it was the one who plays Malcolm, I remember him saying to me after one take, he was like, we actually prefer the scripted lines. I'm like, that's really nice of you, I'm glad you do. Yeah, but I think there's always room for something unexpected, and I think that's why, and also just for energy, it's nice to have an improv take, even if you don't use it, even if you throw it out. I think sometimes the take after is very funny. So yeah, definitely with the script, I was constantly trying to improve it as we went along, and even in the edit. So the voiceover we added in the edit, and I think of that scene in Adaptation. I don't know if you
yes brilliant. Yeah.
God help you if you use voiceover. And I couldn't help but think that with some irony. Yeah, but actually it helped a lot to kind of like piece together all the flashbacks, and the journey. So that is something, that I wrote after the fact.
I mean, films do have voiceover, and there's a place for them. And so, yes, but I know many a writer and director has been terrified to use voiceover after that film. True. No, and I was going to say too, so comedy is tough, and directing comedy, I imagine, is very difficult. Writing comedy. So for that process, is comedy kind of the area you see yourself working the most in? Do you really like to play in that area? And what was that experience like, getting that cast together and being on set and making sure that, do you feel it in the room, when they're hitting the mark, that they're hitting those comedic moments?
Yeah, I mean, definitely can't claim to be an expert, but I think I definitely like working comedy, and I think obviously there's many times when making comedy is just, people think that it's going to be, people imagine you're having a lot of fun, but you aren't necessarily. You're like, really depressed about the day or something at the end. So it's not always a bunch of laughs, but yeah, I definitely like it, and I definitely like feeling like, okay, great, that's working. And I think what's hard is sometimes when it's not working, and I honestly think that's down, if you've cast right, then it's down to the script. I think if you haven't cast right, then yeah, you can have your great dialogue and it doesn't zing. But yeah, sometimes I would, if I watched it and I felt, then I'd go back and do a bit of a rewrite. Yeah, but it's interesting. It's definitely a fun genre overall. It's definitely fun to write comedy when it's going well, because you think of stuff and you're like, oh, that might be fun to have that.
Right. You're writing it alone, you're laughing, and then the test is when you actually give it to people to see it come to life. And that's part of the process as well. How long did you have with your cast? Like, how long was your shoot?
Oh, so we actually shot in stages, like really due to the way that Array's financed. So yeah, we shot in stages. So I worried that it was going to become like a sequel to Boyhood, because the actor who played Wilbur was actually aging and growing in size during this 2-year period, because we shot it over 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, wow. And so yeah, so he is different ages, and it's funny how it feels relatively seamless. But the other funny thing is that we had to get her a wig. I mean, this is why it's like, I say this after the fact, after we've all watched it,
right?
Because she changed. I mean, it might be really obvious. Everyone might be like, "Yes, we know, we saw the wig." But that was the other thing, is she changed her hairdo quite dramatically, and so we had to get this human hair, a replica of her hair made, and but then independent films working with wigs, it just feels like a combination should never ever take place. So sometimes you would see the wig and it would look like off to one side, or and so I think those are the challenges of shooting over so much time. And also for the actors, they had to like resume characters, who in the narrative was a space of weeks, and then within the filming was a space of perhaps 2 years. So I think they did a great job of that.
That is a real, again, independent film. That's so much we talk about, that is a really interesting behind the scenes tidbit, because 2 years is a long, couple months, whatever, but a couple years. And did you end up shooting out of sequence? You picked up the shots where you needed to based on the scenes. So now I do need to rewatch the film, because I'm going to have to, that's a great, trivia, particularly with your young actor. He's the one who would be, most, but I can tell you that it didn't occur to me. So that's great.
That's good.
I just watched it start to finish. So you did pickups. So they were all over the place in terms of the storyline over those 2 years. Wow. I imagine that added to your stress, having a 2-year run to completion. Was that a little more stressful, not having a finished film at that time? Yeah.
It definitely was. I think it feels, making independent film feels like being in the Hunger Games, and it just felt like it just was just ongoing, never ending.
Great analogy. I can tell you're right, comedy. But I think that's so true. And I think it's so great for our audience to be able to kind of get that sneak peek behind the scenes, because at the end of the day, you just see this great polished film, and that's what you want, right? You don't want them to know how the cake got made, that it was, like 3 different kinds of flour and you ran out, and right, so I think that tells even more how great of a job you did pulling this all together. And so now, am I right? The film premiered before the pandemic, right? It had a chance to get some live audiences, and then so that happened, and now it's still continuing. Like, if you want to, I'd love for you to kind of just share a little bit about what's going on in the film now and what's up, next for you as well.
So it will be released in the US around Valentine's Day next year.
Perfectly timed.
Yeah. So obviously we don't know exactly what's going to be happening then, but yeah, it will be coming to the US officially, on a bigger scale, February 2021. So I'm excited about that.
Congratulations, that's fantastic.
Thank you. And we've got some other countries that it will be released in. So that's very exciting. And then for me, strangely, I am doing an MBA part-time. I know. People were always like, what? Just because to learn more about the business side of things, because I think, with film, it's a business, and having raised the money on this, I was quite interested to keep the business side of things going alongside, developing various series ideas, because I feel that I love, I don't know about you, but I love watching series, and so that's what I've been thinking about, mainly series concepts and stuff.
Wow, you are a busy woman. And were you doing the MBA while you were shooting the film, or did the idea of getting more experience in the business side come to you after or during that process? Because I think you're right, it's show business. So
no, it's towards the end actually that I decided to kind of add that into the mix.
Well, I think that, again, all these wonderful surprises in the storytelling, I think that's so fantastic. And truly, we are just so delighted to have your fabulous film in our festival, and truly it's so wonderful to see you, and it's great to know that in early 2021 we'll be able to share this with the rest of those folks who didn't get a chance to see it during our festival. But keep writing, because we want to have a great opportunity to one day hopefully bring you here in person. So
I'd love that. I think that's the thing that makes, obviously there's many sad aspects of this situation, but I think it's so nice to watch your film with an audience. I think it's one of the things I like the most, and so I think that's one thing that I'm really happy that still it's good how people are able to adapt and maneuver things. But I will look forward to watching the film again with audiences.
Absolutely, it will happen. But meanwhile, this is so special. This gives our audience such a great opportunity to be here with you, and we're just so grateful, that you made the time. And thank you so much for having Love Type D in our festival this year. And it's
what a pleasure.
Thank you. And so I want to thank you. Sasha Collington, for being here. And I want to thank our audience for their support of Artist Naples and the Naples International Film Festival. And we will see you soon. Have a good day.